Today we're going to look at using the grid technique to transfer one image to another drawing area. And then we're also going to look at how you can use the grid technique to take a smaller image and enlarge it into a bigger area. Now, using the grid technique, what it does is it allows us to break down an image piece by piece so that you aren't overwhelmed by the overall image that you're seeing. If I asked you to draw these people just by looking at your image, some of you would have no problem, would be really excited and confident about it, but others of you may find that you're a little intimidated by the details and getting the proportions right. So using the grid technique just breaks it down a little bit more methodically so that you can have a little bit easier time getting all the proportions correct. So I've already numbered the grid for you and put letters on the grid. That just allows us to keep our spot a little bit easier so we don't lose our space, and lets us know where we are as we work. Okay. I will also have available for you viewfinders so that if you get distracted by some of the extra images while you're working, you can isolate one square on your source image and isolate that same square on your drawing so that you know where you're supposed to draw and you only focus on the visual information in that square. These are optional for you to use, but they are available to you if you want them. Now, while we are doing our grid drawing, what you're going to want to do is pay attention to the shapes that you're seeing inside each square as you're drawing it. Each shape or line will enter or exit a square or take up a certain amount of space in a square. And if we create reference points as we are translating the image from your source to your drawing, it will make it a little bit easier for you to line everything up in your big drawing. Now, I've already started a drawing, and we'll be switching back and forth from our source to our main drawing. So I already have the woman's eyebrow drawn, and I've started on her eye. Okay, we'll talk about connecting the dots in a little bit, but I'm going to go ahead and start in the nose area so you can see where we can get started on connecting and creating those reference points. Now, if I look on my grid, the nose, I'm going to start the nose here in J6. Okay, so I need to find J6 on my drawing. J and then down to 6. And that's the square that I'm going to be focusing on. I'm going to go ahead and use my viewfinder to isolate that square on my source image. And it just breaks it down a little bit better. So I just focus exactly on the lines in only that square. Now, if you want to use your viewfinder on your source image but not on your drawing, that's fine. Or if you'd like to use it on your drawing and draw through that hole, you can do that as well. I'll go ahead and use it. So now I'm just looking at where my lines come into my drawing, and if they go all the way through my drawing, or through my square, or if they stop at some point. So I'm going to find a line that goes all the way through my square first, and it's going to be this diagonal line right here. So if I look, if I go from the bottom of my square in the corner, and I come up the side of my square, this line meets the edge of this square just a little bit below halfway. So what I'm going to do is on my square, on my drawing, I'm going to go up to halfway and then come back a little bit, and I'm going to make a little bit of a mark. That's going to be my reference point right there, that little tiny mark right here. Okay. Now I'm going to go back over to my square and see where this line goes out of my square, and it comes to the bottom of my square, almost to the very corner. Almost, but not all the way there. So I'm going to go over to my drawing and go to my corner, and then just come over a little bit to the right, to the left, and make a reference mark. Now I have two little marks here on my paper. Zoom here so you can see it. I have a mark here and right there. And those are going to be my lines that I'm going to essentially just connect the dots on, because this is a pretty straight line. So using my reference marks, I'm going to go ahead and connect the dots. I'm going to add a little bit of a curve because I see that line has a little bit of a curve. And then I'm going to thicken up my line because that line's pretty thick. Okay, so I have that first line drawn. And I'm going to continue on comparing where the lines cross and intersect and where they go out of the square. And just continue to connect the dots to draw my series of lines inside that box. And then there's a little tiny line, a little sliver of something. I'm not sure exactly what that is the beginning of, but I'll draw that sliver too. Okay, so I've completed this square. If I look on the left here, you can see my source image. That looks pretty good on the right. Okay, now I could continue down if I'd like to J7, and then I would just repeat that process as I go. Now if you want to jump around all over the place, you can, or if you want to just focus on certain features. I'm going to keep working on this nose here. Now I have a shape that comes up and doesn't really go off my paper or off of the square. So I just have to kind of guesstimate where it looks like it needs to end. The nice thing about doing this in pencil is I can always go back and erase it. Now I don't have a solid line over here. This is actually kind of a shadow. It's just some hatch marks, but they do make an implied line. So I can do kind of a light line here and then do my hatch marks to make my shading. Okay, and you're just going to continue on. I go ahead and do square I7 because there's not really a lot in there, just a continuation of those hatch marks. And then I'll finish the point of the nose over here in K7. Right there. If I isolate it, it's just a little tiny triangle. And here I have my nose. Now there's more to it, obviously. It continues on in the source image up, and I will find those continuations, either a straight line or a curved line, how it connects. And by building square by square, you will end up with a pretty decent copy of your original source. Now notice, right now I'm just going through two squares at once. If you have a shape that you would prefer to do all of the shape at once and follow it through each square, you can do that as well. You don't have to just work square by square. Connect the dots. So now I have the beginning of my drawing, and you'll just keep going until you finish. Now this is a 1/2 inch grid to a 1/2 inch grid. You can use the grid technique to enlarge from a smaller grid to a larger grid, which is what you're going to do when you finish your first grid. On the back of your paper, you have a larger grid. To draw from a smaller grid. And the technique is really the same. The only difference is you're working from a small square to a bigger square. So let's look at square C3. This is a 1/2 inch grid to a full inch grid. But I can compare my squares. They're the same shape, and I can still find the halfway point of my big square just like I can find the halfway point of my small square, and I can compare where those lines come in and out of the grid. So if I find the halfway point of my small square, this outer line of the fabric that's wrapping her head. It goes about 1/3 of the way over from that far corner. So that's where my first reference point is going to be. In C3, about 1/3 of the way over, I'm going to put a little reference point. And then I'm going to come up and look where that line goes out of the square on the side, and I would say about 1/8 of the way. Again, you can kind of eyeball it. And then I'm going to have a curved line, but it's not exactly curved. There's a little bit of a bump in it. So I'll start with a curved line, very lightly, and then I'll go back in and add my little bump. So there's the start of my outer edge. And then I can look at these other curved lines that show the wrinkles in the fabric and see that one of the curved lines starts at the bottom and goes over almost to the corner. And then continue up the headscarf. And over. Now if I wanted to, instead of stopping at that grid line, I could continue this line, because this line continues over almost to the corner of this square here. I'm going to go ahead and continue that line over to the corner just to make it a little bit more consistent over here. Now if I need to make an adjustment with my eraser, I could. This seems to be a little bit too curved. So we're really just comparing square to square and finding where that line goes out here, and then just readjusting the size up here. And you're going to continue the same technique that you did on the other side of your paper, but we're just working from a smaller square to a bigger square. Again, some people will choose to do one whole square and then move on to the next whole square as they're drawing. Some people will choose to do a whole feature. Say they want to start with the eyes, and the eye goes from one square to the next. So they'll finish the whole eye first, and then they'll go back and finish the other details around it. Either way will work fine. You need to just decide what is going to work best for you and your brain. Now, I have a little brain trick here for you. If you are worried about drawing your design, you're worried that it's not going to be exactly perfect. If you turn your paper upside down and you do your drawing upside down, it tricks your brain into not looking at the overall picture, but it helps you break it down into the individual shapes and lines that you're seeing a little bit easier, and you will be surprised at how much better your drawing is. So if you're really worried about it, give it a shot. Try out a few squares upside down and see how good they turn out. Good luck and have fun!